Hi, I'm Numbert, and you're watching Battle Gamer News. Today I'm reviewing James Cameron's Avatar, the video game. James Cameron's Avatar, the movie The Game, is a video game based off of a movie, and because of that I'll tell you right off the bat that the game sucks, and there's absolutely no reason for that. I haven't actually seen the movie yet, but I do know from the trailers and reviews that I've watched that it has a great story, creates a rich and varied fantasy world with complicated relationships and well-crafted characters. I also know from the developer diaries for the game that Ubisoft had full access to the concepts and ideas behind the movie. They basically said, alright, let's make a unique and accessible open-world game that takes and expands upon the concepts built in the movie. They then took that concept, which is probably the best way to make a movie tie-in video game, and threw it all down the drain, and made absolute crap. The game begins with a terribly mediocre story, if you can even call it that. You're then held by the nose through an hour of tutorial missions and poorly built third-person shooter gameplay. In the movie, the main character must go through an internal conflict on whether or not he should remain with the RDA or join the Na'vi resistance force. In the game, they throw all of that out, instead opting for an emotionally and ethically bankrupt choice, where you literally sit there and have to say, I want to join that side. The game doesn't really offer any sort of real ethical choice either, instead opting for a black and white approach, making the Na'vi out to be the absolute good guys and the RDA out to be the absolute bad guys. I had already suffered through about an hour or so of the shooter gameplay, so I opted to play a subpar third-person action game as the Na'vi. With the Na'vi, there are some cool ideas with the unlocking of skills as you level up, but just like the core concept, it was poorly executed. The combat is over far too quickly for any of the battle skills to be at all useful, and the only one I ended up using was the healing spell. That said, the combat itself for the Na'vi isn't nearly as bad as that of the RDA, and if you approach it as a sort of complicated version of the old kids games we used to play, it does passable. All of the vehicles handle rather poorly, and especially the Banshees are practically unrideable a lot of the time. It was on the Banshees that I really noticed how awesome and bad the graphics are in this game. The forest itself is strikingly beautiful at times, and since it was made from the stunning Far Cry 2 engine, it has a ton of detail. On the other hand, a ton of stuff just seems straight incomplete. For instance, there are a ton of no-clipping errors, and a lot of the time in melee combat you just won't hit things that are standing right in front of you. What little story there is falls completely flat later on, and you're sent on a series of random fetch quests.
Find Langoreh. 3 camps. Go.
And it doesn't help that while the environments are pretty, there is little variation within the set-off areas. Speaking of set-off areas, the game is so not a true open world game. There are set-off zones that are completely unconnected, and while each zone is technically open world, the game feels more linear than anything. Another sort of cool idea they had was to add a separate mode called Conquest that is directly tied to the single-player game. Conquest is basically a turn-based strategy game where you use the experience you gained in single-player as currency to build units and defenses. It's pretty cool to see it tied in with the single player, and it is fun, but honestly, if I wanted to play a game like that, I would just go play some Flash game. The multiplayer is even more mediocre than the single player, with the Na'vi and RDA fighting each other, but depending on the map, it usually turns into a slaughterfest for one side. The matchmaking is also absolutely atrocious. Most games will give you the feature to join a random game, but no, you have to pick a level you want to play, and from there go into the individual levels matchmaking, and in many cases you'll find that nobody else is playing that level. It's very tedious and honestly completely unnecessary. Avatar the video game started out with a good central concept of building a world to go along with the movie universe, but they completely turned around on that idea and honestly didn't pull through in really any other regard as well. We're recommending that you skip this one unless you're a hardcore Avatar fan, and we're giving it a 4 out of 10. Thanks for watching Battle Gamer News. Subscribe and check back every week for more game reviews. You may have noticed we didn't do a review last week, and we're sorry for that, but we were making a video for the Escapist Film Festival, so if you want to see that video, there's a link over there, and we'd appreciate any votes we can get. Thanks.